Hello, welcome to today's class on music, genre, and expectancy violations, which is all about balancing expectations and novelty. Let's get started. First, you should go take the poll that's linked on our page for today's class. The poll is about musical tastes, and it's very important that before you proceed any further, you go take the poll. It's not very long, it's only a few questions, it's easy to fill out. Go take it now. Okay, so I hope that you had fun taking that poll. Let's talk about genre, and you'll see where that poll comes in just a minute here. So, genre is a culturally recognized type. For instance, action, comedy, romance, drama, documentary, indie, foreign, sci-fi, fantasy are all genres of film. There are other genres, but these are kind of some of the major ones. And when you go to see a comedy film, you don't expect to feel very, very sad for most of the film, right? Because that is not the point of a comedy. A genre has a set of expectations for what it should be like. When you go to see a comedy, you expect to laugh, you expect to have a good time, you expect to have it be lighthearted, you don't expect to learn any deep life lessons. You don't expect to learn a lot about somebody else's culture or life or what it's like to be in a different group from yours. You don't expect it to be deep. You expect it to make you kind of forget real life for a while in a lighthearted way, right? You maybe even expect it to be kind of stupid in a funny sort of way, or maybe in a witty sort of way, depending on the type of comedy that you like. But a genre is really a set of expectations that we culturally have for how something should be. And things like a film or a book or a movie, film, a piece of music can deviate somewhat from generic expectations, but not too far. So sometimes we mix these genres together and have romantic comedies, for instance, or science fiction action movies, but and sometimes we have types of films that are, not really a mixture of two types. They're mostly one type, but then they're not quite all of our expectations of that type. And sometimes people are like, oh, this is the most amazing action movie you've ever seen because so much stuff blows up, but also you learn this really deep life lesson. And it's brilliant. Inception. Right? And sometimes people hate Inception because of that. So when you try to push the edge of what kind of type of thing something is, sometimes people love it and sometimes people hate it, and usually you get like right on the edge of that line because people like things to fit within their expectations. They like to know what kind of thing they're going in to see, and sometimes they like their mind to be blown and sometimes they don't. Music is made up of genres. It reflects or challenges the culture it's part of, like other art forms. The packaging and promotion of music is done by sometimes the band and sometimes the label. And which of these it is depends quite a lot on which part of their career the band is in. So very often at the beginning, packaging and promotion is done by the band, and then in the middle it's done by the label, and then if the band gets really famous, sometimes the band can have control of packaging and promotion again if it wants to. So you often will see kind of a curve there, that at the beginning the band has control just because the label doesn't put any money into it, and so the band is doing it. And then later they take back control because they want it, but in the middle the label has control of it. So how the band is being represented and how much creative control they have over the music that they're creating can often vary depending on where they are in their career, and how they're being portrayed visually, and in their in their production is often done by the label, again depending on where they are in their musical career. But here's an important thing. Music taste is a combination of personal and cultural values. It's not only a cultural marker. So when one person likes a band and that band is culturally understood to represent a particular thing, that doesn't mean that that person likes them because of that cultural thing. They might not. They might like them for a completely different reason. And that cultural thing might be because of the label, not the band. Could be because of the band, could be because of the way that they're being promoted by the label. Like, this can be a very complicated thing. So the reason that I had you do that poll is because there was a study done in 2007 by Hall, and I have included that study in our folder for this week as additional resources if you are interested. And the study was about how college students perceive other college students based on their media taste and their media choices. So the researcher basically told college students, okay, you're going to have a new roommate, and your new roommate is going to, and your new roommate likes these things. And they talked about music and TV and movies, I think. And we're going to focus on the music part today. And the college student, they basically were given like a profile of the person, and the only things that they changed in the profile were what kind of media the person liked. And the college student had to predict how well they'd get along with their new roommate based on this profile of the person. And the researcher found that there was a really, really strong difference in how well people thought they'd get along based on the type of music that the person liked. Because we often treat music as something that has, well, we treat music as a stand-in for cultural stereotypes. So, for instance, we have this stereotype that everyone who likes country music, drives a pickup truck, is from a rural community, and probably likes cowboy hats and dogs, and wears flannel a lot, and only blue jeans and boots. Probably also likes horses, right? Like, we have this, and guns, definitely guns. Like, we have this really stereotyped idea of who listens to country music. Even though, like, the person I know who listens to country music is, like, sells makeup, has a PhD, lives in Washington, D.C., owns an SUV, doesn't have any guns, and does have dogs, though, does like to wear boots, does like cowboy hats, right? So, like, there's a real, like, some of those stereotypical things are true about her, and some of them really, really aren't, right? So what does that mean? Right? We can't just take these stereotyped ideas of who likes country music and just, like, say, oh, if you like country music, you're going to be exactly like this. Because personal values and cultural values about music are not a neat overlap, and stereotypes aren't true. And stereotyping people doesn't get us very far, usually. So, I mean, Old Town Road is still doing fairly well on the charts. What kind of genre is that? What genre is Old Town Road? Who listens to Old Town Road? Right? So we often will judge people based on stereotypes and connect that to musical tastes, right? And so we'll say, oh, this person likes country music, they probably have a pickup truck. Not necessarily. Maybe, but those are not necessarily correlated things. They're not necessarily connected, right? Because musical taste is a combination of personal and cultural values. Maybe it happens that in rural communities people like country music more, but also just because you're from a rural community doesn't mean you like country music. That's stereotyping, and we don't want to be doing that because it pretty quickly means that we are not communicating clearly and that we are making assumptions about other people that aren't true, and that's the fastest way to make people not listen, is if you assume things about them that are wrong. Other things that were found in this study were that if guys liked heavy metal music, other guys thought that they were great, but girls thought that they were super suspect. But if girls liked heavy metal music, guys thought that they were amazing, and other girls thought that they were probably terrible. Similarly with opera, if guys liked opera, other guys thought that they were probably going to be the worst, but girls thought that they were probably going to be the best. Whereas if girls liked opera, other girls probably thought that they were probably going to be fine, and guys thought that girls who liked opera were probably going to be, like, kind of annoying. So there was a huge gender split on some of these types of music. All right. Important points on musical taste. We learn how to understand music, and this is cultural. So we have a specific scale and a specific way of understanding music in Western culture that is dependent on the relationship between sounds at fixed points. In other parts of the world, the points are fixed at other places, or the relationships are set up differently, and that music sounds really, really different to us. And we often are not taught how to understand music from other cultures because we learned the 8-note scale. So we are taught how to understand music. That's why we have music class. And it's not a universal inherent thing for music to be exactly this way. There are other ways to understand music. There are other musical scales and notes. There are other sequences of sound. Sound can be fixed in different arrangements. We are just used to Western scales and tones and chords, and it can be quite jarring to listen to music from other places for the first time, but it can also be quite revelatory to listen to music from other places, because they just music in other scales and other relationships sounds so different from the way that Western music works. Music is as much about the listener as the musicians, which means that music is co-created between the musician and the listener. The meaning in music is made as a relationship between the performer and the audience. Not only in live events, although especially in live events, but also in recordings. The musicians create their part of the music, and the listener creates their part of the meaning in listening to the music. If musicians make music and there's no one to hear it, they are hearing it, so they are making their own meaning of it, but the audience is also making a meaning of it, and that's an important part of music, is that the listeners are making meaning themselves, and every person at a concert is making a different kind of meaning of what is happening at that concert. Every person who listens to an MP3 is making some different meaning. Even when you listen to a song a bunch of different times, you understand that song differently. Maybe only slightly differently. Maybe it may not even be like a deep difference. It may just be like, yeah, this is my jam. And I just, this is my song that I like, and I'm just gonna bop to this while I walk to class. That is a fun meaning to be making. I am a person who is notorious for not even noticing that when I put on a playlist, I have accidentally set it to repeat the first song forever, and I don't notice for like 2 hours. So I have a peculiar relationship with music. But the important thing here is that music, as other forms of art, is as much about the listener as the musicians. The musicians have to do all the hard work, but meaning is co-constructed. It is created together between the listener and the musicians. Okay, So let's talk about expectancy violations theory, which is when you break the rules and you don't follow the genre, or in general, when you don't follow the rules. So expectancy is what you expect to happen. So expectancy has several parts. The context, which are the cultural norms about what kind of situation this is. So what are we doing right now? The relationship, which are the cultural norms about what kind of roles you and the other person are playing. Who are we right now? So right now I'm the teacher and you're the student. Maybe in a different situation, I'm the barista and you're the customer. But right now I'm the teacher and you're the student. The context that we're in right now is that we're in a class. And then the communicator characteristics, appearance, nonverbal communication, personality, etc. Okay, so you have expectations about what should happen based on this situation. Now, the thing that happens to me all the time that I don't expect to happen, but does, is that, so let's say that I am sitting in, this is in the before times when I used to leave my house. I'm sitting in an airport, for example, and I am reading a book and I have headphones on. My expectancy is that nobody will talk to me. I have these headphones on. They're very big, right? People should be able to see them. They blend a little bit with my blue hair, but they're pretty big headphones. They're not earbuds, right? Cultural norms about this situation are that, you know, I'm sitting in a passenger area in an airport. Passengers don't usually talk to other passengers. I have headphones on. Those are part of my communicator characteristics. They signal that I am unavailable. I cannot see you. I am reading a book. I am engaged in an activity. You know, leave me alone. My head is down, you know. I'm really trying to signal that I am unavailable. And there are cultural norms here. I'm a passenger, right? I'm sitting in the passenger area. I am wearing clothing that does not look at all like a uniform. Invariably, someone will come up to me and ask me questions or directions or about the flight. Every single time. And I don't know why. And this violates my expectations for what should happen. I don't know why. I guess I should have expectations at this point that people are going to ask me questions. But all the time, people come up to me and they're like, "Excuse me, could you tell me about the flight to Orlando?" And I'm like, the flight to Orlando got moved to gate G3. It wasn't at this gate in the first place, but it got moved to gate G3. Do you not listen to the announcement? Okay, it's over there. Go past the Starbucks. There's no gate G at the Pittsburgh airport. Only 4 terminals. But still, like, people always ask me questions. And I do so much to try to not look like I should be asked questions. And they ask me questions anyway. And I don't know why. I think there's something about my communicator characteristics that even though I try really hard with like my accessories to look like I'm not going to answer any questions, my face just looks like I will. And then people ask me questions anyway. All right, violation valence is how much we like or hate the unexpected behavior. So violation is when you break the rules or the norms, and valence is the liking or hating part. It's like emotional variability here. When the cultural norm is positive, do it more often. So if you tell a joke and people laugh, you do that more, right? Babies figure this out so fast. When a baby does something and everybody laughs, the baby does that again, immediately, over and over, which is why if a baby, for instance, so I worked at a preschool for a while, and I worked in the 1.5 to 3-year-olds room, and one of the kids I worked in an international preschool. It was my job to teach English to 2-year-olds who did not speak English as their first language. And one of the kids, instead of TR, said F, and he loved trucks. And it was real hard for us as the teachers to not laugh every time he talked about trucks, because he was adorable. But we had to not laugh, because if we laughed, he would do it more. And we were trying to not reinforce this behavior. We would say, truck, and he'd say, fuck, and we'd be like, So, when people like the strange thing that you did, do it more often. Yay, you're weird and quirky in a good way. But when people react negatively, don't do that, right? And we figure this out pretty quickly. We try stuff out, people like it, we do it more. We try stuff out, people don't like it, we don't do it anymore. But when somebody does something and we don't know what they meant by it, we interpret it in light of how it can affect us. And this is where we get to communicator reward valence. So let's jump to that, because it's very clear, like, if we like the thing, we reward it. If we don't like the thing, we don't reward it, or we punish it. But it can get real tricky if we're not really sure, like, that was weird. And that's where we get to this reward valence. So this is how much we think we can gain from the interaction. If the person's able to do a lot for us, we will put up with more deviant behavior. If your boss is weird, but they're your boss, you let a lot of things slide without pointing it out, typically, because it's your boss. This is messed up, but it's how the world tends to work. If the person isn't able to do very much for you, you usually don't put up with as much deviant behavior. This is how bullying happens. We don't let people be weird if we view them as being less powerful than we are. We let people be weird if we view them as having money and influence and resources and power. We don't let people be weird if we view them as being lower in status than we are. And so the less access to resources that people have, the less quirky we let them be. Bullying is part of this. This is also how we get Me Too. how powerful men are allowed to assault women for all of their careers. But it's also, it doesn't have to be on the level of criminal behaviors. This can also just be like how quirky we let people be. How absent-minded people can be. How the junior partners in a firm have to wear suits with ties and look very, very nice every day, and the senior partners can kind of roll in with rumpled shirts, and that's fine. Having power and influence gets you a lot of leeway. Because, well, expectancy violations. This is like Mark Zuckerberg can wear ripped jeans and a t-shirt to an investor meeting or a tech conference with people from all over the world, but everybody in the audience is wearing suits. And he can do that because he's Mark Zuckerberg. Should he do that? Should he have sent out a memo to everybody else that they could wear jeans and a t-shirt? But he could do whatever quirky things he wants because he's Mark Zuckerberg, right? It's that kind of idea. All right, so let's think about music and genre and expectations. This is an activity for you. Pick a piece of music. Listen to the piece. And then ask yourself these questions. These questions allow you to think through whether the piece of music fits the generic expectations for that song. And gives you a way to analyze that piece of music, which is a fun thing to do sometimes. Maybe try it with Old Town Road. Maybe try it with a song from Hamilton. All right, let's talk about music in the kind of music industry sense. So I want to kind of walk you through some stuff about music that you may or may not know because you weren't alive for some of this or weren't kind of around a lot for some of this. So music weathered a major crisis when the internet happened, and it's now largely stabilized and it's in a fairly stable model for now. But here's what happened. So we had physical recordings originally on like wax or clay, and then we had it on various forms of tapes. Music was played on the radio and to some extent at home, and then became readily moved around on various forms of recordings like records, But it wasn't until we got cassette tapes that people were able to really record their own music and mash it up and such, and also make mixtapes. And mixtapes were like making a Spotify playlist, but you had to record it off the radio, or if you had a really fancy tape deck, where you could play 2 tapes at the same time. You could record from one to the other. It was really hard to do. You had to push record it and play at the exact right times to get the things to go, and everything had to be queued up. There was a lot of fast forwarding and rewinding and stuff. But you could make a tape for your friend or for the car with a playlist, and we would do that for each other. It was a thing. But this got people kind of making their own playlists, and that was really fun. And then we got CDs, and then we got MP3s with the internet. Well, a fair bit into the internet. MP3s kind of broke everything. Everybody started to just download and file share music like crazy. There were companies, well, sites called Napster and LimeWire, where people illegally file shared and downloaded music. And the music industry went into this huge crisis because nobody was paying for music anymore. And everybody was like, oh no, oh no, 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 music is going to die. And then I moved to Russia. So when I came back, music was fixed because somebody had invented Spotify. Subscription and ad-driven streaming services eventually popped up and stabilized the music industry again. So there was this period of time, though, where everything was on fire and everybody was like file sharing, and college students were getting arrested by the FBI and taken to prison for like dozens of years for their illegal music download collection. It was crazy. My brother's school, which was an engineering college, had so many of their students arrested that they ended up just like paying the music industry to just have free access to all of the music for all of their students so that nobody could get arrested anymore. It was a wild and wacky time, everybody. Yeah, so we were really excited when Spotify got invented and Pandora, and Pandora came first and then Spotify, at least in the timeline of when I knew about them, and that kind of stabilized the industry again. We also got this new business model where musicians can now get famous and build their fan base on YouTube or other places, SoundCloud, etc., first, and then get record deals. It used to be that you had to get a record deal, like you'd play a tour maybe, or you'd do a lot of local shows or compete in battles of the bands or something, and you'd make an EP, and you'd get a record deal, and then you would really build your fan base. Now people are like, no, I come with my own fan base. Would you like my money or not? And that's really shaken up the way the record industry works and the way that music deals work. You can still do the old model, but this getting famous on YouTube first thing has really changed the power dynamics of how musicians and record labels kind of negotiate and work with each other. So, do you think that this current streaming model will last? What are the strengths and weaknesses of it? How do you listen to music? Do you buy CDs, MP3s, vinyl? Do you listen to Spotify? Where do you think the form of music is going to go next? What are the strengths and weaknesses of using genre to categorize music and the people who listen to it? Some questions to take with you. All right. Homework. 1. Read chapter 6 about the radio in the textbook. 2. Write up and turn in your data viz and reflection on music due tonight. And 3. Think about what kind of media you will give up for your media fast. Go check out the media fast assignment. It's due the week of September 21st, I believe. So go read that assignment and see what you're doing, and pick what type of media you're going to be giving up, because that starts next class. So it's going to be next class through the week after. So you want to pick out what kind of media you're going to be doing for that. And that's important to know now so that you can plan. So pick that out. I will talk to you next class. Have a lovely day.